Imagine walking through a narrow, winding canyon, its towering walls painted in shades of rose red, pink, and golden brown. The path twists and turns, echoing with silence until suddenly the rock walls part, and before your eyes rises a structure so breathtaking, so impossibly carved, that it feels less like the work of human hands and more like a dream etched into stone. This is Petra, the rose-red city, lost for centuries and rediscovered only 200 years ago. Petra is not just another ruin. It is not just an archaeological site visited by tourists with cameras and guides. It is a city of secrets. Every chisel mark on the stone, every hidden water channel, every silent tomb carved into the cliffs tells a story, but never the complete story. Petra whispers more than it speaks. And it is this whisper, this sense of mystery, that has fascinated explorers, archaeologists, historians, and travelers for generations. For centuries, Petra remained hidden from the Western world. Its name disappeared from maps. Its people, the Nabataeans, vanished into history, leaving behind no empire, no grand libraries, no written chronicles. All that remained were the silent guardians of stone, temples, tombs, and monuments cut directly into living rock, waiting for someone to rediscover them. But let's pause for a moment. Why does Petra matter? Why should a forgotten desert city, carved by an ancient tribe in Jordan more than 2,000 years ago, hold such a powerful grip on our imagination? The answer lies in three things: its mystery, its mastery, and its message. The mystery first. The mystery. Who were the Nabataeans? How did they rise from desert nomads to builders of one of the most advanced cities of the ancient world? Where did they learn to tame the desert? To control water so perfectly that an entire population could flourish in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth? And perhaps the most haunting mystery of all: why did they vanish? Petra was once a bustling city of tens of thousands, a hub of trade and culture. Yet by the Middle Ages, it was a ghost town, its grandeur buried under centuries of sand and silence. The mastery second, the mastery. Petra is not built in the usual sense. Unlike cities of stone blocks stacked upon each other, Petra was literally carved into the cliffs themselves. The Nabataeans took mountains and sculpted them into temples. They transformed canyons into ceremonial avenues. They redirected flash floods into reservoirs. It's a journey into its hidden history. We will uncover who the Nabataeans were, how they built their desert empire, why Petra rose to greatness, and why it fell into silence. We will explore the engineering marvels that allowed them to harness water in the desert. We will step into the carved temples and tombs that blend Greco-Roman artistry with Arabian identity. And we will ask the haunting question: what remains? Undiscovered? So join us as we walk through the Sikh, into the rose-red city carved into stone. This is the story of Petra, its rise, its glory, its fall, and its legacy. To truly understand Petra, we must first understand the land that shaped it. Geography is not just a backdrop, it is the silent architect of civilizations. The mountains, valleys, rivers, and deserts dictate where humans settle, how they live, and how they thrive. For Petra, geography was everything: its strength, its wealth, and eventually, its vulnerability. A land between worlds, Petra lies in southern Jordan, near the modern town of Wadi Musa, which literally means Valley of Moses. Nestled between rugged mountain ranges and deep desert valleys, the city sits at the meeting point of worlds. 2. The north, the Fertile Crescent of Syria and Mesopotamia. To the west, Palestine and the life-giving Nile of Egypt. To the east, the vast deserts of Arabia. To the south, the Red Sea, and beyond it, the trade routes of Africa and India. This central position turned Petra into a gateway of commerce. Caravans carrying spices, silk, incense, and exotic goods could not pass from Arabia to the Mediterranean without crossing Nabataean lands. Geography handed Petra the keys to the desert kingdom. The harsh beauty of the desert. But this land was no paradise. The landscape of Petra is harsh, arid, and unforgiving. Rainfall is scarce. Temperatures swing dramatically between scorching days and freezing nights, and the terrain is dominated by sandstone cliffs, canyons, and dry riverbeds known as wadis. At first glance, this seems like the worst place to build a city. No rivers flow here. No fertile plains stretch across the horizon. Yet the very challenges of this land gave the Nabataeans their unique identity. By mastering desert survival, they turned Petra into a fortress city, hidden and protected by nature itself. VO builds suspense. What others saw as a barren wasteland, the Nabataeans saw as a treasure chest. Every cliff was a wall waiting to be carved. Every wadi was a channel waiting to capture water. Every mountain pass was a gateway to trade. Geography gave them both obstacle and opportunity, and they embraced both. The Sikh, Petra's dramatic entrance. One of the most defining features of Petra's geography is its entrance, the Sikh. This narrow gorge, nearly 1 mile long and up to 200 feet deep, is a natural geological formation created by tectonic forces splitting the sandstone mountain. Walking through the Sikh is like walking through time. The walls rise so high and close together that sunlight filters down in slivers. For ancient travelers, the journey through the Sikh was not just a path, it was a ceremonial procession. The sudden reveal of Al-Khazneh, the treasury, at the end of the canyon remains one of the most dramatic architectural experiences in the world. But the Sikh was more than just a dramatic stage. It was Petra's defense system. Any invading army would be forced to march single file through its narrow passage, making Petra nearly impossible to conquer by force. Geography served as both guardian and gatekeeper. The valleys of water. The name Wadi Musa, Valley of Moses, hints at Petra's relationship with water. According to local tradition, it was here that Moses struck a rock and water gushed forth to quench the thirst of the Israelites. Whether myth or memory, the symbolism is powerful. Water in the desert is life. Petra's geography provided seasonal floods through wadis, dry riverbeds that suddenly filled during heavy rains. Left unmanaged, these floods could destroy. But the Nabataeans, guided by the geography of their land, transformed them into life-giving reservoirs. They carved cisterns, channels, and dams directly into the cliffs, storing precious water for months of drought. Without this mastery of the landscape, Petra could never have survived. The caravan route's geography did more than protect and sustain Petra, it enriched it. The city sat at the crossroads of major trade routes. The incense route from southern Arabia, carrying frankincense and myrrh, passed directly through Petra. Goods from the Silk Road found their way here, linking Petra to India and China. Caravans from Egypt brought grain and luxury goods. Roman and Greek merchants sought spices, perfumes, and rare stones. Caravans of hundreds of camels would snake their way into Petra, carrying goods that were as valuable as gold. Geography made Petra a commercial powerhouse, a city where East met West, where cultures blended, and where wealth flowed like water. Natural fortification. The sandstone mountains surrounding Petra acted as walls of protection. The city itself is hidden deep inside valleys, invisible from a distance. An outsider could walk within a mile of Petra and never know a metropolis lay hidden among the cliffs. This natural camouflage kept Petra safe not just from enemies, but from history itself. While empires rose and fell, Petra remained hidden, its grandeur preserved by geography's protective embrace. Geography and symbolism. For the Nabataeans, geography was not just practical, it was spiritual. Mountains and cliffs were sacred spaces. Many of Petra's tombs and temples are built high above the city, carved into inaccessible cliffs as if reaching toward the heavens. The desert landscape also shaped their identity. To live in Petra was to live in balance with nature, to respect its harshness while harnessing its gifts. Their gods were linked to mountains, water, and fertility. Geography and faith intertwined, leaving behind monuments that blend utility and spirituality. Strategic vulnerability. Yet geography was a double-edged sword. The very location that made Petra powerful also left it vulnerable. As sea trade routes expanded in the Roman era, caravans became less important. Ships bypassed Petra's deserts, carrying goods directly from Arabia and India to Mediterranean ports. Civilizations are often remembered by what they leave behind. The pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Greece, the walls of China. But what about the Nabataeans? A people without great libraries, without endless scrolls of history, who left behind no written chronicle of their rise and fall. Instead, they carved their identity into the very mountains of Petra. Who were they? Where did they come from? And how did they master the desert so completely that their city became one of the wonders of the world? Origins in mystery. Nabataeans remain one of the most mysterious ancient peoples. Historical sources are fragmentary. Greek and Roman writers mention them in passing, usually describing their wealth or their stubborn independence. Archaeological evidence paints part of the picture, but questions remain unanswered. Most scholars believe the Nabataeans were nomadic Arab tribes who migrated northward from the Arabian Peninsula around the 6th century BC. They were likely Bedouin. In origin, desert dwellers who roamed with camels, surviving on trade, herding, and raiding. Over time, they settled in the region of southern Jordan, where Petra lies, and began transforming from nomads into city builders. But unlike many ancient peoples, the Nabataeans left behind very few written records of their own. Their language was a form of early Arabic written in an Aramaic script, which later influenced what we now recognize as the Arabic alphabet. Yet their inscriptions are mostly short: names, dedications, simple notes. Their silence adds to their mystery. From nomads to builders, the transformation of the Nabataeans from desert wanderers to architects of Petra is one of history's great stories. Most nomadic tribes fade into history without leaving permanent monuments. The Nabataeans did the opposite. They took their deep knowledge of the desert and used it to build a city that could withstand its challenges. Their skill in survival was their foundation. They knew how to track and conserve water, making them experts in one of the desert's rarest resources. They mastered the camel caravan trade, giving them wealth and mobility. They learned to exploit geography, choosing Petra's hidden valley as their capital, a place nearly invisible and naturally fortified. In less than a few centuries, they rose from obscurity to become masters of the desert trade routes, masters of trade. If Petra was the jewel, trade was the lifeblood that made it shine. The Nabataeans controlled some of the most important trade networks of the ancient world. The incense route carried frankincense and myrrh from southern Arabia. These resins were prized for religious rituals, perfumes, and medicine, and were worth more than gold. They also connected with the Silk Road, bringing spices, textiles, and precious stones from India and China. Caravans brought ivory and exotic animals from Africa. Rome and Greece eagerly consumed these luxuries, making Petra's merchants wealthy beyond imagination. The Nabataeans grew rich not only from the goods they sold, but from the taxes and tolls they charged on every caravan that passed through their territory. Their reputation spread far and wide as shrewd traders, skilled negotiators, and tough desert allies, or enemies. Narrator, suspenseful tone. It is said that no caravan could cross the desert without Nabataean permission. They did not just control trade, they controlled access to survival itself. The watermasters' trade made them wealthy, but water made them powerful. In a land with almost no rivers or lakes, the Nabataeans engineered a miracle. They made the desert bloom. They carved channels into the walls of the sick to guide rainwater into the city. They built cisterns and reservoirs, some able to hold thousands of gallons of water. They created dams to capture flash floods, turning danger into life. They lined their water systems with ceramic pipes and plaster to reduce leakage, advanced technology for their time. Because of this, Petra could sustain tens of thousands of people. It could support lush gardens, public fountains, and even luxury baths, all in the heart of the desert. Their mastery of water remains one of the greatest engineering feats of the ancient world, culture, and identity. The Nabataeans were not just engineers and traders, they were cultural chameleons. Petra's monuments show a fusion of styles: Egyptian influences in obelisks and temple fronts, Greek architecture in Corinthian columns and amphitheaters, Roman styles in arches and urban planning, Arab traditions in tombs and inscriptions. This blending was deliberate. Petra was a crossroads of civilizations, and the Nabataeans absorbed and adapted foreign influences, making them their own. Their gods, too, reflected this mixture. Worship of local deities like Dushara, alongside the adoption of Hellenistic and Roman symbols. They thrived by being both unique and adaptable, desert people who could speak the languages of empires. A kingdom without kings? Another mystery of the Nabataeans is their political system. Some historians describe them as a monarchy, with kings such as Aretas IV, 9 BC, 40 AD, leaving inscriptions and coins. Others argue that their society was more tribal, with leaders chosen by councils of elders. What is clear is that the Nabataeans were fiercely independent. They resisted foreign control for centuries, frustrating both the Seleucid Greeks and the Romans. Rome respected them enough to treat them as allies before eventually annexing their kingdom in 106 AD. Their rulers were not just kings. They were also seen as protectors of trade and guardians of Petra's sacred spaces. Daily life in Petra. What was it like to live in Petra at its height? Imagine walking through its bustling streets 2,000 years ago, merchants shouting prices of incense, silk, and spices, camels loaded with exotic goods from India and Africa, stone-carved houses decorated with colorful frescoes, public banquets, and festivals honoring their gods, musicians playing flutes and drums echoing in the canyon walls. The Nabataeans valued family, trade, and community. They wore flowing robes suitable for the desert climate, adorned with jewelry from distant lands. Their markets offered foods ranging from dates and figs to imported wines and oils. Despite their desert origins, Petra was a cosmopolitan city, alive with diversity and color. Silence of the Nabataeans. And yet, despite all this richness, one thing is striking: the silence of the Nabataeans in history. Unlike the Egyptians, they left no grand libraries. Unlike the Romans, no massive written chronicles. Unlike the Mesopotamians, no clay tablets detailing laws or trade. Why? Some believe it was a cultural choice, an oral society that valued memory over writing. Others think their records may still be buried, waiting to be found. Whatever the reason, this silence adds a haunting quality to Petra. We know the Nabataeans through their stones, not their stories. Legacy of the Desert Masters by the time Rome annexed Petra in 106 AD, the Nabataeans had already left their mark on history. Their influence lived on in architecture, language, and trade networks. Some scholars argue that Nabataean script directly influenced the development of Arabic writing, shaping the script that millions use today. If Petra is remembered as a miracle in the desert, then its greatest miracle was not its carved monuments, but its mastery over nature itself. How do you build a city in one of the driest regions of the world, far from rivers, far from fertile plains? How do you sustain tens of thousands of people in a land where rain falls only a handful of times each year? The Nabataeans answered these questions with genius, and their answer still amazes modern engineers today. The challenge of water in the desert Petra's location in southern Jordan is one of extremes. Summers are brutally hot, with high temperatures soaring above 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Celsius. Winters bring cold nights that can dip near freezing, but the greatest challenge is water scarcity. Rainfall averages less than 150 millimeters a year, and it often arrives suddenly in violent floods that rush through wadis, destroying everything in their path. For most civilizations, this was a death sentence. But the Nabataeans looked at the desert differently. They realized that while rain was scarce, it was not absent. If they could capture, control, and conserve every drop, they could not only survive, they could thrive, harnessing the floods. The Nabataeans began by taming the flash floods that poured through the wadis surrounding Petra. Instead of letting the water wash away soil and homes, they redirected it into dams, channels, and underground cisterns. Dams were built across wadis to slow the flow and prevent destruction. Canals cut into the rock guided the water toward reservoirs and cisterns. Stone-lined channels ensured the precious water did not seep away into the desert sand. This transformed destructive floods into a steady, reliable water supply. Narrator, dramatic pause. In a land where a single rainfall could mean life or death, the Nabataeans turned chaos into order, mastering the very element that had defeated countless tribes before them. The reservoirs and cisterns. At the heart of Petra's water system were its cisterns and reservoirs. Archaeologists have discovered hundreds of them carved into the rock surrounding the city. Some were small, meant for individual homes. Others were massive, capable of storing enough water to supply thousands of people. These cisterns were lined with waterproof plaster, preventing leakage. Many were hidden underground, shielded from the sun to reduce evaporation. Some cisterns were even placed high in the cliffs, allowing gravity to carry water down through a system of pipes and channels. VO builds fascination. It is estimated that Petra's water system could store millions of gallons at its peak, enough not just to drink, but to support agriculture, animals, and even luxury baths in the middle of the desert. Agriculture in the desert. The Nabataeans were not content with survival. They wanted prosperity. With their water systems, they created gardens and fields where few thought life possible. Terraces carved into the hillsides captured soil and moisture, allowing the cultivation of grapes, figs, olives, and cereals. Travelers to Petra described vineyards and orchards flourishing in the valley, a green jewel hidden in red stone. This agriculture not only fed the population, but also provided products to trade, further enriching the Nabataean kingdom. Urban water management. Water shaped not only Petra's survival, but also its urban design. Channels lined the Siq, guiding water safely into the city. Fountains decorated public squares, symbols of wealth and control. Private homes had access to cisterns, ensuring daily supply. Public baths offered comfort and luxury, echoing Roman influence. Narrator reflective. Tone. To walk through Petra was to walk through a city that defied its environment. Every wall, every channel, every carved stone whispered of a people who refused to bow to the desert. Engineering, genius. Modern engineers still marvel at Nabataean technology. Their use of gravity-fed channels was highly advanced, requiring precise calculation of slopes to ensure a steady flow without overflow or stagnation. Ceramic pipes, plaster linings, and sediment traps show a scientific understanding of hydraulics far ahead of their time. Some channels were even covered to keep water clean and cool. Filters ensured that silt and debris did not clog the system. This was not trial and error, it was deliberate, planned engineering. VO adds weight. The Nabataeans were not just desert survivors, They were desert scientists, reading the land like a book and writing their solutions into stone. Sacred connection to water for the Nabataeans, water was not just practical, it was spiritual. Many temples and altars in Petra are connected with water rituals. Springs were considered sacred. Some scholars believe their main deity, Dushara, was linked to fertility and water. This fusion of survival and spirituality meant that controlling water was not only about engineering but also about identity. To be Nabataean was to master the desert's most precious gift. Comparison with other civilizations, Petra's water system stands alongside the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world, the aqueducts of Rome, the irrigation canals of Mesopotamia, the Nile flood management of Egypt. Yet Petra's achievement is unique because it was built in one of the harshest climates on Earth, without rivers or fertile plains. If Petra was the heart of the Nabataean kingdom, then trade was its lifeblood. Without trade, Petra would have been just another desert settlement. With trade, it became one of the wealthiest and most influential cities of the ancient world, standing at the crossroads of empires and cultures. Petra at the crossroads, Petra's geography placed it at the center of ancient commerce. It sat on the junction of several key routes: the incense route, which carried frankincense and myrrh from southern Arabia to the Mediterranean; the spice route, bringing cinnamon, cloves, and exotic goods from India and beyond; connections to Egypt, which supplied grain, papyrus, and luxury items; routes north to Syria and Mesopotamia, linking to the Silk Road. Every caravan that passed through Arabia toward the west had to reckon with Petra. The Nabataeans controlled not just roads, but access to water and safe passage, making them indispensable middlemen. Caravans of wealth. Imagine a caravan of hundreds of camels winding its way through the desert. Each camel carried sacks of incense, spices, silks, or precious stones. Guards rode alongside, watching for bandits. Merchants discussed deals, while guides led the way to Petra. When such caravans reached Petra, the city came alive. Marketplaces filled with exotic aromas. Traders from Greece, Rome, India, and Arabia mingling in the streets. Warehouses storing goods before redistribution. Narrator, immersive tone. To walk through Petra's markets was to walk through the ancient world itself. Egypt, India, Arabia, and Rome all gathered in one place, exchanging goods, ideas, and culture. Nabataean wealth. The Nabataeans grew rich not only from selling their own goods, but also from taxing and protecting caravans. They provided water, rest stops, and security in exchange for tolls. This system made Petra a fortress of wealth. Roman. Historians remarked on the riches of the Nabataeans, describing them as a people who lived in luxury. Their wealth funded Petra's monumental architecture: the treasury, the monastery, the royal tombs, all symbols of prosperity born from trade. The incense and spice trade, among all goods, incense was the most important. Frankincense and myrrh, harvested from trees in southern Arabia, were vital in religious rituals across the Mediterranean. They were burned in temples, used in burials, and even valued as medicine. Spices like cinnamon, pepper, and cloves came from India and beyond. Textiles, pearls, and ivory flowed into Petra, only to be sent onward to Roman and Greek markets. Narrator, reflective. In the ancient world, incense and spices were more than luxuries. They were sacred, and Petra controlled their flow. To command such trade was to command power itself. Cultural crossroads, trade brought more than wealth. It brought culture. Petra became a melting pot where languages, religions, and ideas mixed. Greek inscriptions sit beside Nabataean ones. Egyptian gods appear alongside Arabian deities. Roman architectural influence merges with local design. This cultural blending gave Petra its unique identity, a city that was both Arabian and cosmopolitan, desert-born yet world-shaped. Petra and Rome, ever hungry for control, recognized Petra's importance. For years, the Nabataeans remained independent, using their wealth to negotiate with Rome. But in 106 AD, the Roman Empire annexed Nabataea, making Petra part of the Roman province of Arabia. Even under Roman rule, Petra remained a vital trading hub for some time. Roman roads expanded, but Petra's role as a crossroads persisted, though gradually weakened as sea trade became more important. The beginning of decline as maritime routes grew, ships carrying goods directly from Arabia and India to Mediterranean ports. Petra's importance began to fade. The desert caravans were no longer the only highway of trade. Geography, once Petra's strength, became its weakness in the face of new technology. But during its golden centuries, Petra had already left its mark as one of the greatest trade cities in human history. If the Nabataeans are remembered for their mastery of trade and water, then they are celebrated for their mastery of stone. Petra was not built with bricks or blocks. It was carved directly into the living rock of the mountains. Every temple, every tomb, every theater stands as proof of their artistry, their ambition, and their ability to merge cultures into one breathtaking vision. The Treasury, Al-Khazni. The most iconic of all Petra's monuments is the Treasury, known in Arabic as Al-Khazni. Towering almost 40 meters high, its facade is carved directly into the red sandstone cliff, glowing pink at sunrise and sunset. For centuries, Bedouins believed the urn at the top contained treasure, hence the name, the Treasury. In reality, it was likely a royal tomb or a temple, perhaps built in the 1st century AD under King Aretas IV. Its architecture is a blend of Greek, Roman, and Nabataean styles. Corinthian columns rise with elegance. A central tholos, circular structure, stands crowned by an urn. Sculpted figures of gods and mythological beings adorn its facade. Narrator, building awe. Standing before the Treasury is like standing at the threshold of another world. It is both familiar, echoing Greek temples, and foreign, carved not as a building but as a vision sculpted into stone. This was Petra's front door to the world, its masterpiece to impress visitors arriving through the Sikh. The monastery. At Deir beyond the Treasury lies Petra's other great monument, the monastery, or Ad Deir. Larger but simpler in decoration, the monastery towers at 45 meters high and 50 meters wide. Reaching it requires climbing more than 800 stone-cut steps. The monastery was likely a temple dedicated to Nabataean deities, later repurposed as a Christian chapel during Byzantine times. Its vast interior could host hundreds, making it one of Petra's most awe-inspiring sacred spaces. Unlike the ornate treasury, the monastery's grandeur comes from its scale, an overwhelming mass of stone shaped into a temple that dominates the mountain. The royal tombs on the eastern cliffs of Petra lie the royal tombs, a row of monumental facades that house the remains of Nabataean kings and elites. Each tomb tells a different story of artistic influence. The urn tomb, with its massive chamber and later conversion into a church. The silk tomb, named for the swirling colors of its sandstone. The Corinthian tomb, echoing the treasury's ornate style. The palace tomb, with a facade resembling a multi-storied palace. These tombs demonstrate the Nabataeans' blending of death and grandeur. To them, the afterlife required monuments as eternal as the cliffs themselves. The amphitheater Petra was not only about temples and tombs. It also hosted spaces for performance and gathering. The amphitheater, carved into the mountain, could seat around 8,000 spectators, an enormous number for a desert city. Unlike Roman amphitheaters built from stone blocks, Petra's version was carved directly into rock, an engineering marvel. It symbolized Petra's role as both a cultural and commercial hub, where traders and citizens gathered for entertainment, politics, and ritual. Everyday architecture. While Petra's great monuments steal attention, the city was also filled with ordinary homes, markets, and streets. Archaeologists have uncovered rock-cut houses, stairways, and courtyards that give us a glimpse into daily life. Markets sold spices, textiles, pottery, and imported goods. Stone-paved streets guided caravans through the city. Water channels ran alongside them, blending engineering with urban design. Narrator, reflective tone. Petra was not just a city of the dead, carved with tombs. It was a city of the living, pulsing with trade, rituals, and daily life. Its architecture reminds us that beauty was not reserved for kings, but shared by its people. Blending of cultures. What makes Petra's architecture truly unique is its fusion of styles. Nabataean creativity, born of the desert. Greek elegance with columns and pediments. Roman grandeur with arches and theaters. Egyptian symbolism with obelisks and sacred spaces. This mixture reflects Petra's role as a crossroads of civilizations. Every facade was both an artistic statement and a political message. Petra belonged not to one world, but to all. The symbolism of stone for the Nabataeans, carving into stone was more than practicality. It was symbolic. Stone was eternal, resistant to time and weather. By carving their temples and tombs into the cliffs, they declared their permanence. Even when their people vanished, their city would remain. And indeed, Petra's monuments have survived earthquakes, abandonment, and centuries of silence. The Nabataeans themselves may be gone, but their stone voices still speak. Civilizations are not defined only by the stones they leave behind, but also by the beliefs that shaped those stones. In Petra, every carved temple, every altar, and every sacred mountain was more than architecture. It was faith written in stone. To understand Petra, we must step into the minds and rituals of the Nabataeans, a people whose culture was as rich and layered as the sandstone cliffs that sheltered their city. The pantheon of the Nabataeans. The Nabataeans practiced a polytheistic religion, drawing from Arabian traditions, yet influenced by Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Their chief deity was Dushara, often depicted as a simple stone block or beetle, representing the god of mountains and fertility. Alongside Dushara stood Al-Uzza, a goddess of power and protection linked to the Venus star. Other deities included Alat and Manat, goddesses also worshipped by tribes in Arabia. But what makes Nabataean religion fascinating is its fusion. Greek gods like Zeus and Aphrodite appear in Petra's temples. Egyptian symbolism emerges in obelisks and carvings. The Nabataeans absorbed the gods of their trading partners, blending them into their own. Sacred mountains and natural shrines, unlike the Greeks or Romans who built temples as freestanding monuments. The Nabataeans often treated mountains and rocks themselves as sacred. High places like Jebel al-Madba became altars for sacrifices. Obelisks carved from stone represented divine presence. Natural springs were considered holy, linked to fertility and life. Narrator, immersive tone. For the Nabataeans, the desert itself was alive. The cliffs were gods, the springs were blessings, and the stars were guides. Their faith was carved into the land as much as their monuments were. Rituals and sacrifices, religious rituals at Petra included animal sacrifices, libations of wine and oil, and offerings of incense. The scent of frankincense and myrrh filled the air during ceremonies, linking their trade goods with their spiritual life. Some rituals took place in open-air altars high above Petra, where priests could watch the sunrise or moonrise during ceremonies. Others were performed in temples or at betel shrines carved into cliffs. The act of carving itself was spiritual, turning lifeless stone into a vessel of divinity. Festivals and cultural life. Petra was not only a place of solemn ritual, it was also a place of celebration. Festivals honoring Dushara and Al-Uzza filled the city with music, dance, and feasting. Musicians played flutes, drums, and lyres. Dancers performed in Petra's amphitheater. Merchants sponsored banquets to display their wealth and piety. Religion and culture intertwined seamlessly. Festivals reinforced community bonds, honored the gods, and reminded everyone that prosperity flowed from divine favor. Art and symbolism. Nabataean art reflects this fusion of faith and culture. Pottery, jewelry, and carvings often carried religious symbols: stars, crescents, eagles, and floral patterns. Their tombs were decorated not with realistic statues, but with abstract symbols, showing their unique cultural identity. Even their gods were often represented not as human forms, but as stone blocks, powerful in simplicity. Narrator, reflective tone. Where Greeks saw gods in human form, the Nabataeans saw them in the eternal shapes of stone, water, and sky. Language and literature. The Nabataean script, derived from Aramaic, decorated their temples and tombs. These inscriptions were often short: names, dedications, prayers. But they give us glimpses of their daily lives and beliefs. From this script, modern scholars trace the evolution of the Arabic alphabet. In a sense, Petra's culture lives on not only in stone, but in the very letters used by millions today. Music and daily culture. Petra's culture was not confined to temples. Music, poetry, and storytelling thrived in its streets. Caravans brought new instruments and styles from distant lands. Banquets included performances, and storytellers passed down myths and histories orally. The Nabataeans were cosmopolitan, comfortable blending their traditions with influences from abroad. This openness was their strength, making Petra a vibrant, diverse city. Religion and power. Religion also served as a tool of political power. Kings like Aretas IV emphasized their role as protectors of Dushara's cult. Temples reinforced royal authority, linking divine favor with political legitimacy. Yet the Nabataeans never forced uniformity. Their religion was flexible, adaptive, able to absorb influences without losing identity, a reflection of their culture as traders and diplomats. Spiritual legacy. Even after Rome annexed Petra, the city's sacred spaces endured. Some temples were converted into Christian churches. Others remained silent ruins, their gods forgotten but their symbols intact. Today, visitors still climb to high altars, still gaze at betel stones, still feel the sacred silence of Petra's. When we think of Petra, we often imagine its monuments, the treasury, the monastery, the royal tombs. But behind these masterpieces of stone lived thousands of ordinary people: traders, artisans, farmers, musicians, priests, children. All of them formed the heartbeat of Petra. To truly know this city, we must step away from its monuments and walk into its streets, its markets, and its homes. This is daily life in Petra, homes and family. Life. Most Nabataeans lived not in grand tombs, but in rock-cut houses and simple stone dwellings scattered across Petra's valleys. Some homes were carved into cliffs, others built from mud brick or stone blocks. Wealthier families had decorated interiors, sometimes with colorful frescoes. Families were central to Nabataean life. Extended families often lived together, sharing resources. Children were taught oral traditions, religious practices, and family trade skills. Marriage was both a personal union and a way to strengthen community bonds. Narrator, soft tone. 4. The Nabataeans, the home was more than a shelter. It was a school, a temple, and a place where identity was passed from one generation to the next. Food and agriculture. Petra's ingenious water system allowed agriculture to flourish even in the desert. Nabataean diets included dates, figs, olives and grapes, barley and wheat for bread and porridge, goat and camel milk, cheese and yogurt. Meat was eaten during festivals or by wealthier families. Wine and olive oil were produced locally and traded abroad. In the markets, imported foods like spices, nuts, and dried fruits from distant lands added variety. The aroma of cinnamon and frankincense mixed with the smell of roasted meats and baked bread. Clothing and adornment, the Nabataeans. Dressed in long, flowing garments suited for the desert climate. Men wore robes and cloaks, often belted at the waist, while women wore colorful dresses adorned with jewelry. Jewelry made from silver, gold, and precious stones reflected Petra's wealth as a trade hub. Glass beads and pearls from India and the Mediterranean were common among elites. Hairstyles varied, some simple, others elaborate for festivals. Clothing was not just practical. It was a statement of status and culture, blending Arabian traditions with foreign influences. Work and professions. Daily work in Petra was diverse. Traders managed caravans and markets. Farmers tended terraced fields. Craftsmen carved stone, made pottery, or worked in metal and glass. Priests led religious ceremonies. Musicians and storytellers entertained at feasts and gatherings. Women played an important role in managing households, markets, and sometimes religious rituals. Slaves, or servants often from foreign lands, also lived in Petra, working in wealthier households or fields. Entertainment and festivals, life in Petra was not all labor. Music, dance, and storytelling were woven into daily life. Flutes, drums, and lyres accompanied banquets. Dancers performed in homes and public squares. Storytellers recited myths, histories, and caravan tales. The amphitheater hosted larger gatherings, plays, musical events, and perhaps even political speeches. Festivals honoring gods like Dushara included feasting, sacrifices, and processions, uniting the community in joy. The markets, Petra's markets, were the city's heartbeat. Merchants from Rome, Egypt, India, and Arabia mingled in crowded squares. Stalls overflowed with spices, silks, perfumes, pottery, and jewelry. Farmers sold figs, olives, and dates. For Petra's people, the marketplace was more than commerce. It was a social hub, a place to meet, exchange news, and experience the diversity of cultures that passed through Petra's gates. Education and language. The Nabataeans valued oral tradition, but inscriptions suggest literacy existed, especially among elites. Children likely learned trade skills from parents. Priests and scribes may have taught reading and writing in Nabataean script, the ancestor of modern Arabic script. Wisdom was often transmitted through storytelling and poetry, carried across generations by memory and performance. Social. Hierarchy Petra had a layered society. Kings and elites controlled politics and wealth. Merchants and traders formed the backbone of the economy. Farmers and craftsmen supported daily life. Servants and slaves filled the lower tier. But unlike rigid societies, Petra's trade wealth allowed social mobility. A skilled merchant or craftsman could rise in status. The rhythm of life, daily life in Petra, followed the rhythm of desert survival and trade. Sunrise, families tended animals and fields. Midday, markets and trading bustled. Evening, families gathered for meals, stories, and prayers. Festivals and caravan arrivals brought bursts of excitement and wealth. Every great civilization carries within it the seeds of its decline. For Petra, the jewel of the desert, the fall was not sudden but slow, like sand slipping through an hourglass. Its monuments still stood, its water still flowed, but the lifeblood of the city, trade, began to fade. And when trade died, Petra's heart stopped beating. The Roman annexation in 106 AD, the Roman Empire under Emperor Trajan annexed the Nabataean kingdom. To Rome, Petra was too valuable to remain independent. the city became part of the province of Arabia Petraea. At first, Petra adapted. Roman soldiers arrived, roads were improved, and Petra remained an important stop for caravans. But Roman control also changed priorities. Trade routes shifted toward Roman ports, and Petra's independence was lost. Narrator, pause. For centuries, the Nabataeans had thrived as masters of the desert trade. Under Rome, they became subjects of an empire whose gaze looked not to Petra, but to the sea. For centuries, Petra lay hidden, forgotten by the outside world. Rediscovered in the 19th century, studied in the 20th, today Petra stands not as a lost city, but as a living icon. It is no longer just the story of the Nabataeans. It is the story of Jordan, of world heritage, and of humanity's timeless fascination with what the past leaves behind. Petra in modern Jordan Petra is located near the town of Wadi Musa, and it is now Jordan's most famous landmark. For Jordanians, Petra is not only an archaeological site, it is a symbol of national pride. The image of the treasury appears on currency, stamps, and promotional materials. The surrounding communities, especially the Bedouins who once lived in Petra's caves, now form part of the modern story. Many Bedouin families work as guides, craftsmen, and performers, sharing their traditions with visitors. Tourism and global recognition. Petra became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985, and in 2007, it was voted one of the new 7 wonders of the world. Since then, it has become one of the most visited archaeological sites on Earth. Hundreds of thousands of tourists walk the Sack each year, gasping as they first see the treasury appear through the canyon walls. Night tours with candlelit paths create magical experiences, while camels and donkeys carry visitors deeper into the city. Tourism has brought prosperity, but also challenges. The sheer number of visitors accelerates erosion, damages fragile stone. Carvings and strains local infrastructure. Balancing preservation with accessibility is now one of Petra's greatest struggles. Preservation efforts organizations like UNESCO, the Jordanian government, and international partners work tirelessly to protect Petra. Projects include restoring collapsed facades, reinforcing water channels against floods, training local communities in conservation, using 3D scans to digitally preserve monuments. Narrator, hopeful tone. Petra is not just about the past. Preserving Petra is about the future, ensuring that generations to come can stand where the Nabataeans once stood and feel the same awe we feel today. Culture and the Bedouin legacy. The Bedouins who lived in Petra for centuries are now central to its cultural identity. Many were relocated in the 1980s to nearby Wadi Musa to protect the site, but they continue to play a role as guides and storytellers. Visitors hear traditional music echoing in the canyon, see Bedouin crafts in the markets, and learn legends of Petra passed down through generations. For them, Petra is not just an archaeological wonder, it is home. Petra in media and popular culture. Petra's cinematic beauty has made it a favorite of filmmakers. Its most famous appearance is in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 1989, where the treasury was portrayed as the resting place of the Holy Grail. Countless documentaries, novels, and travel films feature Petra as a backdrop of mystery and adventure. This global exposure has turned Petra into a symbol of exploration itself, the idea that hidden wonders still exist in our world. Petra's legacy. Petra's true legacy lies in what it represents: adaptation, how humans can thrive even in the harshest environments; connection, a city where East met West, uniting cultures; impermanence, proof that even the mightiest cities fade, yet leave echoes behind. Today, Petra stands as both a ruin and a reminder. It tells us that civilizations are fragile, but human creativity is eternal. The Nabataeans are gone, but their vision carved in stone continues to inspire.